Hey everyone, new video. It is still Adam's birthday weekend, but by the time you're watching this, his birthday will be over and we don't have to give him any more attention. Anyway, we're gonna keep on talking about being in a relationship with an adoptee, being an interracial couple, all of that fun stuff, because part one of this video I realized is mostly geared towards just people of color. Like, we didn't really talk about adoption specific topics because we just, did the surface level stuff. Okay, so I guess to start this off, Adam has told me that I was the first adoptee he's ever met that he knows of.
Yes.
Some people may not have told you. So I guess, can you tell people, first, how did you find out that I was adopted? Because I didn't tell you. And do you think that the way you interacted with me and that kind of thing was different because you knew that I was an adoptee? Did this change anything?
So I first found out that Lily was adopted through some mutual friends of ours. And I don't remember the conversation specifically, but it was through them. And I remember at that point in my life, I was very adamant and very hesitant to not pry into people's personal business. So, I found out you were adopted, and I was like, you know what? When she wants to talk to me about it, she will talk to me about it. And I can't even remember if we had started to become really close friends then.
We weren't friends at all.
Well, that's also part of it.
Okay.
But, I was curious about it, and, I hadn't met any other adoptees that I know of. So I was really curious, but I wanted to hold off. I didn't want to ask anything. I didn't want to pry into her business or accidentally offend you or make you uncomfortable. I like to hope that I didn't treat you any differently or you didn't feel treated any differently.
I hated him for the first few months of our friendship.
Hated during friendship. Let's think about that.
Well, he forced our friendship, so.
It's worth it.
Okay, so then Adam and I knew each other and then started dating, and then it wasn't until about a year and a half afterwards that he finally met my parents because he had transferred school, so we were long distance. And he actually met my parents without me. He came to my house for winter break and I wasn't coming in until the next day. Props to him for meeting my parents and staying at my house without me. But what was it like meeting my parents and them being white?
I didn't really think about it much, but your parents, we met up and then the three of us went out to dinner the night before you came in. And I remember your parents joking that I looked like their son. And I don't want to say I was taken aback, but I thought about it and I was like, oh, yeah, that's kind of true. And since then, even though we hadn't really opened up the conversation about your adoption, I was very conscious when we were out how I didn't always look like the guest.
And we've touched on this in previous videos, but like the Banana Republic incident where the woman started talking to my mom about her son, and then you were just standing there like, huh? And I was like, hello, I am the daughter. So, yeah, how do you feel about it when things like that happen? Do you feel uncomfortable? Do you feel like you're ever afraid that we're gonna get mad at you or something? I don't know.
I'm not worried that you're gonna get mad at me, but I get uncomfortable and I get a little worried because I want to go into a restaurant or a store in a situation like that, and I don't want you to have to deal with, having to clarify that. And I stress a little bit trying to think if there's anything I can do to kind of avoid those kinds of interactions.
Probably not.
It might be because it's a relatively new experience for me. But yeah, it just makes me uncomfortable and I wish we could just save time and avoid it.
So, since it's your birthday, I asked you like about your birth story and stuff, and maybe that's weird, but for many adoptees, we don't know that information, so I'm just naturally curious about that kind of thing. And you didn't really know about your story either. So you actually asked your mom when you called her. But this kind of just goes into, how do you feel when it comes to like my birthday or my adoption day or days like Mother's and Father's Days? Those days might be more challenging for adoptees. Some adoptees might hate them. It could change every year. How do you approach those days, and what advice would you give to partners of adoptees?
For me, and I expect for a lot of people in my position, my birth story and Father's Day and Mother's Day and all those kinds of things, it's very casual, as in I don't feel any need to stress about it. I acknowledge it the same way most people acknowledge it. My advice would be to just talk to your partner, and not talk to your partner once, but make it an ongoing conversation. Like we talked about how you might feel about it one way one year and completely differently the next year. And it's just, you have to get yourself to ask what might be a tough question. At least for us, I mean, it's as easy as, like, hey, your adoption day is coming up. What would you like to do? And as a partner, your job is just say, okay, sounds good, and then go along with that.
Obviously, at some point or another, it's okay to ask why, but I probably wouldn't ask those questions on the day or very close to the day, because there's so many intense emotions, especially around birthdays. That's when you're born, you're still connected with your mother, and then shortly after that, at least in my case, I was relinquished. And so if there was a year where I didn't want to celebrate my birthday, and then on my birthday, Adam's like, well, why not? That would just be like too much. So understand that there are times when you can ask for more information, and there are times where you should just step back and say, okay, I accept that answer, we're done. And understand that in an adoptee's journey, there are going to be a lot of changes, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. So some years, everything might be great, and then maybe the adoptees come out of the fog or learned something new about their story and everything changes. So don't be surprised if one year they're great and then the next year you're like, well, last year we celebrated and did all this stuff, like, why are you not interested anymore? That's gonna happen. And yeah, it's hard, but it's just how it is. Another topic would be, I've always been very used to being the only Asian or the person of color. I'm pretty much always surrounded by white people, especially in my own family, so, well, other than my adopted sister. But with all of our relatives and everything, we're the only Asians and people of color. So, did you notice that dynamic, like when I went to visit your family and meet your extended relatives, or did you feel uncomfortable about it in any way? Like, I'm pretty used to it now. I still do feel like the other and a little uncomfortable, but I'm kind of just like, hey, this is my family, and this is my fiance's family, that's how it is, whatever.
I remember first meeting your family and just thinking it was very easy. And I keep using the word casual, and that's just kind of what it was. We all hung out as if, it was the 10th time I met them.
Do you think it was easy because they're white?
Well, thinking about it now, I definitely think that could have been part of it. Because when Lily came to meet my family and came to meet my extended family, certain members of my family either like made a point to acknowledge that Lily was Asian, or made it very obvious they wanted to acknowledge it, but weren't comfortable. Yeah.
Oh.
But weren't comfortable doing it.
That's interesting, because I had the opposite experience with your family.
Really?
Well, with your relatives, I think like they probably felt a little uncomfortable and maybe were thinking, hey, she probably gets asked these questions a lot and that kind of thing. We don't want to be offensive. We want to show Adam that we like her. So they would really fixate on other parts of my life. So, when I would tell them I was going to UT Austin, and all of your older relatives would bring up the shooting at UT Austin many years ago when the guy was up in the tower.
Uh-huh.
And I was just like, Cool.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that added another facet to when you visited my family that wasn't there when I visited yours.
Right. My family was pretty much just used to it as they should be. I've been with my family for 23 years now, so this will probably be the last topic because it'll maybe take up some time, and I feel like we'll do a whole separate video on this topic by itself. But this is more just about interracial couples and what it's like dating someone not of the same race as you. Maybe Adam hasn't noticed it as much, but there definitely is some judgment towards an Asian female, white male relationship. A lot of times people question why Asian women aren't with Asian men and kind of perpetuating the prejudice that Asian men are lesser. I never intended that. I'm just attracted to who I'm attracted to, and I've been attracted to Asian men before, but Adam's just the one who I ended up with. So I'm curious about your perspective. Have you found that people maybe have looked at our relationship differently just because of the whole yellow fever, Asian fetish kind of thing? Or do you think that people have moved past that? I don't know. What's your take?
I personally haven't had many interactions where people, said anything really about it, but I definitely believe that it's still something people talk about. I very strongly believe that yellow fever is still a thing, and I do worry about receiving prejudice from that.
I guess for me it's because mostly back in college when I'd go to bars and that kind of thing, there were still guys who'd come up to me and say things like, "Oh, I've never been with an Asian before." So I was like, "You're creepy, go away." But I was curious if, from the male perspective, I don't know if people ever made comments like, "Oh, nice job." A compliment, but highlighting the fact that you're with an Asian.
And I said, "Yes, this is my girlfriend and this is my fiance." And then later in private, they would say, "Oh yeah, nice job. That's pretty cool." How am I supposed to react to that? She is so much more...
You don't have to get all sappy about it.
I don't want to say it made me uncomfortable, but it just made me disappointed. Because I was like, this is not a conversation I want to have.
Maybe people don't tell this to you because you're a man and you can't get pregnant. But I've had comments about how if we choose to biologically have children, our mixed babies are going to be so cute. And I'm like, okay, this is getting a little personal. But there was one story, my friend, and if he's watching this is not to bash you. I think it's really funny. He was like, "Wow, you and Adam are so lucky because you're going to have really attractive mixed babies." And I was like, you can also have mixed babies. You just have to find a person of color. And I thought it was really funny how that's not the first thing that comes into people's minds. Yes, anyone is capable of having a mixed child. Why are we lucky about this?
Mm-hmm. It almost makes it sound like one of us is making a big sacrifice by choosing to be in an interracial couple.
Never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
I would think that it'd be you who's thought of as making the sacrifice then.
Stereotypically, yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And when we hang out with our Asian friend who's a male, people usually assume that I'm with him and not Adam. And Adam's just the white third wheel. But it's definitely an interesting dynamic being in an interracial couple, because maybe you're not as observant as I am at all times, but people stare, guys are kind of like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Yo, that's so creepy, go away." And then more on the social media front, people, say that I should be with an Asian man and really promote Asian culture, and I'm like, I can promote Asian culture in a different way. I don't need to break off my engagement because of that.
So my advice as, the white male in this relationship is to just be conscious of it. There are a lot of things that I just would never notice.
Be aware and don't perpetuate it. So, even if your friend does make a comment like, hey, nice job, or whatever, don't just play along with it. Maybe take that time to have the conversation like, oh, why are you saying that to me? And this is why it's not okay. It's definitely been easier on all fronts once we've gotten engaged and in a more serious phase of our relationship. I'm not saying go get engaged to make everything stop, but it's definitely, people are seeing it more as, okay, they're serious. Like, they're going to get married, start a family, that kind of thing. It's not just like, oh, he just wants to be with an Asian type of thing. And I know that's kind of crude, but that's reality. That's how people see us. So that is the video, and we'll probably be doing a part 3. But we hope that was helpful and maybe a little more adoption specific. The typical closing. The subscribe button is in your bottom right, I think. And there's also like a little red button at the bottom right of the video where you can always subscribe there. My face is gonna pop up also here, and you can click that and subscribe too. And then on your bottom left is a video that is best recommended for you specifically.
Whichever one is popping up right here, it's a good one. I can promise you that.
Okay. The like button is like, Comments below. You can email me. My social media and ways you can connect with me are in the top of my homepage thing. Is there anything else I usually say?
Thanks, guys.